As a manager, you have to balance managing day-to-day operations while developing and helping your employees grow. One of Granite's core values is the pursuit of excellence, which makes us ask the question, how do I get better every day? As a manager, you also should be asking, how do I help my employees get better every day as well? So you've already taken the first step, and that's helping your employee develop by allowing your employee to attend training at Granite. Learning and development not only helps our employees learn new skills, it also helps with engagement and long-term retention of those employees. So although the learning is important, the main goal is performance. So today we're going to talk about how you, as the manager, can enhance your employees' ability to create and sustain a constructive learning environment. So when we talk about learning transfer, what we're really talking about is how the learner can apply the knowledge and skills gained from training when they return back to the job. Each year, billions of dollars are spent on training employees, and with that spend, there's an anticipated return on this investment. Training is only a milestone in the process that leads to on-the-job performance. Learning needs to be supported and reinforced to ensure that the transfer of learning occurs and that performance does indeed increase. Research shows that there is a difference in learner retention depending on the level of manager support received. Let's take a look at that research. In this graph, the yellow line represents learners with negative or no manager support in their learning. Before they attend, they have a baseline knowledge level, and during their training, their knowledge increases as one would anticipate. After the training event, the knowledge and skills they gained during the training begin to drop off. In fact, the learner's retention level drops down to approximately 13% with either negative or no manager support. The black line represents learners who receive encouragement, support, and coaching from their managers. These learners enter the training event with more knowledge than other learners because the more engaged manager have set appropriate expectations for the learners. The managers also model the behaviors that will be formally introduced in the training. The difference becomes apparent after the training event because the engaged managers implement coaching and development plans to support learner retention. As a result, these learners retain 78% of the information presented in the training event. This is a 65% increase in retention between the first group and the second group of learners. This research proves that the impact of positive manager involvement can be quantitatively measured and is substantial. The Learning and Development Department does needs analysis, looks at competencies, reviews research, and looks at best practices to determine what we train in each one of our programs. The choices of what we teach in our learning events is not the only thing that impacts the return on investment. The work environment that a learner returns to has a significant impact on learning retention. If the workplace provides opportunities to use the new skills right away, the learning is significantly increased. We've all heard that phrase, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So without any application opportunities or support to apply the new learning, the return on investment is much lower. For performance to increase and to get that return on investment from training, there are some things that must occur. The participant who attends a training must really have the desire to change. The participant must be a willing participant. And the participant who attends training must also work in the right climate and be rewarded for changing those behaviors on the job. As the manager, you have significant influence on creating the right climate. Your attitudes, responses, and actions related to the training event can either help or hinder the learning transfer process. So again, through research, we found that there are 5 typical management responses that influence the degree to which training transfers in the workplace. First, we have managers that act in a preventing way. They disagree with the training and see it as an imposition, or they don't see it as useful. Because of the manager's lack of support and direct opposition to the training initiative, training does not transfer and the learner will not apply the knowledge gained in the training to the workplace. Secondly, some managers react with a discouraging response. They are less negative about the training. However, these managers still do not support the learning provided, resulting in the same outcome, a lack of training transfer. The most common approach for busy managers is the neutral response. This involves neither supporting nor discouraging the training, but the response includes a tendency to ignore the training and adopt a business as usual attitude. The outcome in this case is really up to the learner. The learner will make the decision to implement training or reject it themselves. Now, fourth, we have the encouraging manager response. This involves engaging in positive dialogue about the training and modeling the behaviors introduced in the training. Since encouraging managers are aware, engaged, and modeling the appropriate behavior, learners are likely to retain and implement the training. And finally, we have the requiring manager. This manager supports the training, models the behavior daily, and insists on training transfer by coaching the learner. Learners with requiring managers are set up for success and will put into practice what was learned in training because they have the support and motivation needed to do so. So effective managers strive to fit into the requiring manager role. So here's some things that you can do as a manager to help with the learner engagement and transfer of learning on the job. Start by doing things that encouraging managers do. Discuss and review the training course objectives and outline goals with the employee before he or she attends training. Attempt to create a readiness to learn. Encourage the employee to apply learning when they return to the job. Some of the things that requiring managers do is know what the employee is learning. Also design activities back on the job to help with that learning transfer. And finally, provide ongoing coaching and feedback, assess the employee, and recognize their achievements. Some responses to avoid are saying things like, "I know what you learned in training, we just don't do things like that here." Some other things to avoid saying are things like, "That sounds great in theory, it's just not realistic in our world." Another response to avoid is, "It's really up to you to do whatever you want to do from the training. I'm only worried about getting the job done." One of our partners, the Center for Leadership Studies, has developed what's called the 4 Moments of Truth, which gives managers a 4-step process to ensure that learning is an ongoing process and not an event. It also helps managers with these encouraging and requiring behaviors. So let's take a look at the steps. Step 1 is to outline pre-training expectations. This is usually done 1 to 2 weeks prior to the beginning of the training session. As the manager, you will receive a list of objectives and targeted competencies in our manager's guide. The employee will receive a similar list so they can prepare to discuss these same objectives and competencies with their manager. As the manager, we ask that you discuss any specific skills that are important to the employee's success and what they hope to gain from the training using these guides. Identify developmental opportunities and agree upon 2 to 3 goals for the employee that they will work on after they've returned from training. Step 2 occurs during training. Again, it's important that the employee actively participate. And as a manager, we would ask that you try to eliminate or minimize interruptions for employee during the training to allow them to focus on the training session. Step 3 usually occurs 1 to 2 weeks after the training is completed. That's where we ask the employee to go back and review the goals that were initially set in Step 1. The employee should discuss some of the things they learned while they were in the training session. As the manager, ask the employee how they might apply these learnings on the job. Go back and look at those goals that were set up in Step 1 and make any changes as needed, and then follow up with the employee either with regular discussions or even just a simple email asking how they're progressing. Step 4. This is really about continuous coaching and following up after the training. Have discussions at least 3 months after the training is over to discuss the progress that the employee is making toward their training goals. And then update the action plan as necessary to continue the employee's progress toward meeting those goals by continuing to provide coaching and reinforcing their skills. It's always good practice to follow up with a brief overview of your discussion, your expectations, and recognition of their hard work in an email. So you may be asking yourself, how do I know what's being taught on the course as the manager if I've never attended the course? Well, for the leadership development programs, the manager's guide that you receive that covers the 4 steps we just discussed We'll also have a quick reference guide that gives you a high-level program overview, the objectives, the competencies, as well as some questions to generate some discussion with the employee. Your employer will also receive a similar document with those objectives, major competencies, but they'll also receive a blank action plan to write down their goals. These goals aren't necessarily items to put in the G3. However, if you can leverage them for a performance review, do so. The action plan document can be used for the step 1 conversations as well as the conversations that might occur in steps 3 and 4. These discussions don't have to be formal or take a long time. They can usually happen in 10 to 15 minutes. And in the Manager's Coaching Guide, we provided some links to helpful online training resources. And if you have any additional questions or need additional information on other learning and development activities, please reach out to the Granite Learning and Development team. As a manager, you play a vital role in transferring learning to performance. As we talked about earlier, employees that do not receive support before, during, and after training can only hope to retain, at best, 13% of the knowledge they received in training. Employees that receive support can retain up to 78% of the knowledge with continued support and coaching from their manager. By consistently seizing the 4 moments of truth, you can drive skill development, close the retention gap, help with employee engagement and retention, increase performance, and increase the return on investment for the training programs presented at Granite. Thank you for your time and be safe.